Our first upload is a podcaster, Mr. George Booker from Southend, joins us aboard. We're going to talk wrestling for the next 10, 15 minutes. Why? Because Stone Cold said so. That's why. There's a little throwback reference for you. Before we dive into that, I should probably say thanks for the upload, George. How are you?
I'm doing very well, mate. The impression wasn't the best, but I'm not going to do the impression, by the way. Because I might as well. And that's the bottom line, because Stone Cold said so. I'll say back there right now. I do not care.
No, absolutely. Listen, I said it in the last hour. I'm reclaiming the word nerd because it got a lot of bad sort of connotation and rep for it, back in the 90s and early noughties. And actually, being a nerd means you're passionate about something, you care, and you want to share it with other people as well. So, I mean, man. How long have you been a wrestling nerd for, George?
Oh, I'd have to say probably since I was like 2 or 3. It is literally one of my first memories being on planet Earth. Is literally watching wrestling, basically watching it with my brother and my mum and my dad, or when my nan would come down, and just literally from there, I haven't stopped. And yes, I do know it is fake, but it's not fake. It's actually predetermined.
Yep, it's so real. If you've ever even seen some of the training that they go through, it is real. All right, it might be staged and all that, but the punishment's real. And if you don't believe me, just go and have a look at the back cover to Mick Foley's autobiography, where he lists all of the injuries he's received over his career.
Yeah, man,
phenomenal and frightening at the same time.
He can barely walk these days, but that's the punishment he put himself through just for the entertainment of the fans.
He did it for the fans, and he did it for the entertainment as well. I mean, you said you got a brother, George, older or younger brother?
He's older. He is older than me. I used to do graphics work for him. Shout out to Six Fair Squares.
Oh, nice.
It's a graphics company in Essex. They're doing very well. And, I go watch wrestling with him. We have a good time. We have a few beers. That's when we sort of separate ourselves and sort of really get into it. Like, come on, and then have a sore head in the morning.
I like this. Look, we did a whole wrestling special on the show a few months ago, and we talked about the local wrestling sort of events, but the organisations, the bodies that sort of started up and that are hosting entertainment nights out for people. It's genuinely such a fun night out. It really is a show, and I don't think I can sell that enough. Really, it is such a show. It's just different from it being a musical or from it being a film on the big screen. It is still something. It's still entertainment which you can enjoy, and you can do so right here in Essex as well. But I can't imagine that you and the brother of was there a few suplexes on the sofa when you were younger?
There was a few broken beds, a few broken bones. But it was all worth it.
Do not do it at home, boys and girls. It's not big, it's not clever, and it will destroy furniture.
There was a few turn-offs as well, but yeah, man, that's sort of part of the childhood, just having a laugh and just, okay, fair enough, I would end up in A&E or a few bruises, but I was having fun.
You've I mean, honestly, because BBC Upload is about what you're creating, and you've made a podcast, from your love, your passion for wrestling as well, and you are, I mean, George, I mean this is a compliment. You are aiming high, when you've got the guests you've managed to achieve to get on board as well, and it's incredible stuff. What gave you the idea to put your passion into a podcast in the first place?
Well, it started off beginning of the year. I did a virtual meet and greet because this is when we were in like the second or third lockdown. And I really enjoyed it. And I managed to actually get a copy of it, sort of downloaded it and edited my bit. So I was speaking to Tori Wilson. So a lot of the old school fans might remember us, the blonde with enhanced, And anyway, and a lot of people were like, that came across really well. You showed charm, you had charisma, you weren't really shy, Why? And then my mate Ryan, shout out to Ryan, who's a Man United fan that's never been to Old Trafford. I love you though.
Not a real fan.
The reason he's a fan of Man United, but he's never been to Old Trafford. And I just had to squeeze that live on radio. And I know he's going to tell me off the next day. But anyway, so basically he's like, why don't you just start your own show, get the guests you want to talk to, and sort of film it and take it from there. And then I did that. I literally reached out to those wrestlers. And the first interview that I actually did was with a wrestler called James Ellsworth, who has appeared in WWE, WrestleMania, various pay-per-views. And it's quite a big deal because though I've listened to podcasts all my life, not just wrestling, but football and films and crime ones as well. And it's a lot harder than you would think it is than just talking to someone and that's it. You've got to have a format, what you're going to talk to them about. You've got to get the time, and especially if they're in America. And it was the first episode. It went well. And then since then, I think I'm about 46, 47 episodes in.
Crikey, George, I'm coming to you for some tips on how to formulate a show then, because I still don't know what I'm doing here. And they've let me do 1,000 of these things. It's amazing, but no, it's a brilliant. It's proof as well, George, that actually, if you've got a passion for something, a subject that you're really into, you're passionate about, there will be another person. And there's always going to be more than that, but there'll always be another person that shares that same passion in the same way as you do. And if you can create something in which you can share, then you'll find a common ground with complete strangers, in the world, through this commonality that you have, and that if you care enough about it and really, really want to do something special with, you can achieve something which, let's be not to be saying anything other than it's way above. You're not a professional broadcaster in the sense you don't work in broadcast media in any way, shape, or form. There's no real way you should have had access to these kind of names in that industry. But you went, do you know what? I care enough about this and I want to do this. I'm just going to do whatever I need to do, work it out myself. Put myself out there, make the effort, and I will make this happen. And here you are, 40-odd episodes later. James Ellsworth on, Alex Kane as well, you've had.
Yeah. I mean, just talking to you at the moment, just hearing that and to follow up on it, I want people to know if they do want to do this. And I don't want to be like, giving a speech like I'm going to change your life. But just if anyone does want to do it, just do it. Like, I'm dyslexic. I'm deaf in one ear. I trip over my words. Like, I stutter and I say end and a lot. But I just persist with it. I just... for every person that accepts and wants to come on, there's 10 others that either ignored me or said no. Yeah. You just got to keep at it and accept it that, okay, not everyone else wants to do it, but that one person that does, make them feel special, And I'm talking to people that I've never heard of before. And I'm a passionate wrestling fan, but there's people, you can't just talk to everyone that's been on the grandest stage in the mall. You've got to talk to up and comers, people that are retired, It doesn't matter what their background is. You do the research and the reward pays off once you've interviewed them and realise I've learned something different today about this person.
And the other thing is when you reach out to someone, that's in that industry and you're interested in talking to them, quite often they are more than happy. So I know as you said, for every one that said yes, 10 said no, but that's availability, just getting timings right, or this, that, and the other. There could be all sorts of reasons that it doesn't happen. But, you often find that they're kind of like, oh, wow, someone wants to talk to me about what I do. More than happy to sit down for half an hour, 45 minutes and have a chat about it, for sure. Because they're passionate about it as well. They care, they love, they want to share the message of that. Whatever it is they do, whether it be wrestling,
it isn't just wrestling,
gardening, or anything.
It can be about the pandemic that we've all, we've all lived it, and talking about football and talking about films. And I think one of the clips that you might be playing from the podcast is from an actor called George Russo. I don't want to just do wrestling. I've also got a football guest next week, John Sitton. If you YouTube him, the first video that comes up is Leighton Orient cost a fiver, and it's just like a halftime rant that he's famous for. And I'm going to talk to him about that. Cheap plug, by the way.
No, absolutely. This is absolutely the place for cheap plugs and even the expensive ones as well. So, George, stay with me for a minute, because we'll talk more about George Russo. So we're going to play a clip of that for you in a moment. And, of course, I will tell you what the podcast is called properly and where you can find it, because I want you to go and subscribe to it. Show George some love. Accidental wrestling songs. Jennifer Page, Crush. 81333 on the text. Start your message with the word Essex. Are there any other accidental wrestling songs for the show tonight? Perhaps I can squeeze a few in after 9 o'clock in the admin hour. I'm not saying I will, but we know the boss doesn't listen after 9, so get away with a lot after then. Our first uploader tonight, Mr. George Booker, is with us with a podcast called What Do You Call It? Where did the name come from, George?
So the name came from two things. You've got Wiley's Garage song, What Do You Call It, Garage? And it's when my mind goes blank. I'm like, what do you call it? When I'm trying to think of a name. So as opposed to calling it like, the Elbow Podcast or 1, 2, 3 Kick Out Live or something like that, that relates specifically to wrestling. I just thought, what do you call it? And I thought, well, it kind of sticks. And no one else has got it, so why not?
Job done. I like it. But you mentioned that it's not, while you're a big fan of wrestling, you're obviously a huge football fan as well yourself. You made reference to that. And you've got some football sort of, interviews on there as well. Is this something that, as a project, something you're working on that you'd you'd like to keep it honed in on the sort of sports that you're passionate about, or are you looking to try and expand it a little further still?
I'd love to expand it, to be honest. At the moment, it's just trying to get sponsors. I mean, I've got the audience, but I'd like to grow the audience.
Yeah.
But don't get wrong, I still want to do wrestling. That's going to be predominantly a wrestling podcast. But I'd also like to mix up a little bit. Like Jericho in his podcast, he won't just have wrestlers, he'll have musicians, actors, that sort of thing. So ideally, in the long run, I would like to have some actors and some sports stars and just even interesting people, you know?
Yeah. That I think is what I enjoy a lot so much about this show. In just 4 nights on the show we do in a week, we can cover so many different topics and different conversations with different people, and it just it makes you a more rounded person. I find I certainly think I'm a more, well, I'll say this very, very cautiously, a slightly more intelligent person than when I started doing this show a year ago because I've learned things from the guests that we've had on the show, and by talking to people like you suddenly expose yourself to kind of different worlds and different thought processes and different ways of looking at stuff as well. So George Russo, when was this recorded?
So this was recorded, I believe, May, June. Okay. And I actually was able to get the interview because I met him Rise of the Foot Soldier, the 5th one that's actually come out. Well, the premiere's tonight, and the film comes out nationwide, well, UK, Friday. And I met him on the set. I did a scene with him. I'm only an extra. It might not be included in the film. A
slice of the What Do You Call It podcast by George Booker, who you can find online, Bookermania89 on Twitter and GT Booker89 on Instagram as well, and search out the podcast on all the usual platforms. What Do You Call It is the name of that, and that was a little slice of the George Russo interview for you.
The sound.